Welcome to Keepers of the Word. We are an esoteric study group of Freemasons whose purpose is of sharing knowledge of mystery schools and debunking misconceptions about Freemasonry. You're here with Mike and Ron.
Any of the opinions expressed on Keepers of the Word do not reflect the opinions of other organizations or Masonic lodges. Today's topic, we have noticed a trend in different interest groups coming to the surface in the fraternity. Some being motorcycle clubs and some being refreshment clubs. But one theme seems to be growing bolder in expressing the deeper side of Freemasonry. With more complex topics being discussed in public forums more than ever, with accepting the idea Freemasonry is a lot more than what is on the surface. And that theme, you may ask, is the esoterics. Today we have with us two very special guests and also current masters of two lodges that are helping lead the way to making esotericism more accepting in Blue Lodges. Masters of both Southern California Research Lodge Society and South Pasadena Lodge 290 will be discussing with us the various means they have been promoting the fraternity through their own lodges by means of esoteric knowledge and large public events. With us is Master of South Pasadena Lodge, Brother Dago Rodriguez, and Master of Southern California Research Lodge, Jeriel Smith. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to finally have you on our show.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So, Brother Jeriel, tell us a little bit about Socal Research.
Well, Southern California Research Lodge is one of 4 active research lodges in the jurisdiction of California. We all take different approaches to it. The signature for the Southern California Research Lodge is our monthly publication, The Fraternal Review, which dates back to, I think, something like about 1952. But for many, many years, it looked a lot like this. It was like a club newsletter. We garnished articles from a variety of publications all over the country, and they were just kind of a mishmash of what's being talked about in Freemasonry. In 2016, the Research Lodge moved from Brea, California, up to South Pasadena Lodge, and we, at that time, created a new strategic plan, and the key to it was transforming the magazine. And we went from that magazine to what we publish now 11 times a year, which is 16 or once in a while 20 pages on high gloss, full color, and each one of those is designed as a unit of Masonic education. Our strategic plan says that what we're trying to do is restore Masonic education to the prominence that it deserves, along with what we call observant practices, sometimes called traditional observance, and also another thing that we consider a traditional practice in Freemasonry, which is use of meditation.
How do you apply that use?
Well, in our case, the South Pasadena Lodge has a monthly hour-and-a-half class on meditation. And we also, and Dago will probably get into this in a little bit more detail in a while, in our internal education program that we have for our candidates going through the degrees. We have quite a few things that we teach them between the various degrees and various requirements that we have for them, such as preparing and giving a 10-minute talk to one of our stated meetings on a subject, be it an emblem, a symbol, or a concept from the degree that they've just had, and how that affects their consciousness. the essence of observant practices, as we try to promote it, is just that, consciousness. And we stress the level of consciousness and the level of intensity in our rituals, and that is the real guts of it, to get more deeply into what the meanings are, rather than just the little introduction that you get. If you only go into the ceremonies of the initiation, all you've done is open the door, and you're told one quick description of what each symbol means to operative Masons and to speculative Masons like ourselves. There are tomes written on what these symbols actually mean. So a second step after you've had the ceremony is study. Read what other people have said about it. We encourage lectures, and we also encourage meditating on the symbols and on the concepts. It turns out these symbols are very, very deep, and they're very personal. And so going inside your own consciousness and opening yourself up to let that symbol metaphorically speak to you on the level of soul consciousness rather than just with your intellect. So we really see that the ceremonies themselves are highly emotional. The study of it is intensely intelligent, and the meditation on it brings it into the spiritual soul level, and that's what our goal is, and we think that's what will bring the generations of young men that are seeking out light and Masonry. And it's been our experience the last few years at South Pasadena Lodge and the Research Lodge that the young men that we're looking for, that's what they're looking for.
We agree. Well, that's the data that's being shown.
I was going to
us
ask
as
if
well.
your data was showing what kind of response you were getting from the candidates, and it, by you saying that, that's kind of the same type of response that we're getting with doing.
Yeah, well, and also
In the show.
to piggyback on what Gerald was saying was, in rebranding the magazine, every issue has a theme that we select a year before, and we created the magazine so it's not a big research magazine like a Philalethes where you'll have like 15-page articles, 10-page articles. It's a gateway publication for a new Mason to be able to digest the information much more easily and be able to expand on it if he wants to. So you have fragments that are about a paragraph long to the biggest articles are 2 pages long, a pop culture section, dates and calendars and other events that we can that you can travel to and see at other lodges in Southern California that we publish on the 3rd page of the magazine in every issue. So we really wanted to make it much more accessible and, in a way, I don't want to say convenient, but that seems like the right word, for a new Mason to be able to start introducing him into Masonic education. And we encourage lodges to feel free to reprint any of the articles in their trestle boards, in their websites, or they could also do Masonic educational talks during stated meetings. They could pick up one of the magazines, open up to a page, and read it out loud to their lodge and discuss it, what they just read, what it meant to them, what it means to the other members in the lodge. So we really wanted to make it very thorough and accessible in that manner as we rebranded it from a pamphlet, basically, to a color
To what it is
magazine.
now.
So-
Yeah, and I really like that. Like, one of the first episodes that I think that I saw that caught my attention was the psychedelic one. And it was like, it was this really just imagery that was so poignant and just jumped out at you and was really beautiful on the cover. And it was like, okay, let's see what this is about. And then at that point was where I was open to the fact that, now Southern
California. What was
California.
the tagline of that magazine? Our Mason Stoners.
There you go.
So
That was
you're
it.
it's really, so you're kind of playing on that fine line also as to, we obviously take our Masonry seriously, but there's a level of levity to it as well, that it's a wink kind of thing to the ritual and the symbol that we were going to be discussing in that issue, which was the ashlars, right? But it does, and we like to play with it like that sometimes, but we also kind of watch ourselves to make sure we don't go too off the deep end and make it not as accessible or too funny or a joke. You know, you really
Or
want
too
to keep-
inside.
Or too inside, yeah.
Yeah, and we see, excuse me, we see Freemasonry is in a stream, an ongoing stream of the sometimes called ancient wisdom. I prefer the term ageless wisdom because it's still being brought forth today. And all of those, as any reader of Joseph Campbell is aware, follow these paradigms of the hero's tale. And the hero is unaware at the beginning who he is. And through time and through his search for his true identity, he comes into his heritage as a special, empowered spiritual being. And we go into connecting many of these different kind of things, like, for example, alchemy. Alchemy is metaphorical in the same way that speculative masonry is metaphorical. There is the operative alchemists using these elements that we have on the table in front of us. And I think it's kind of a lure to get the greedy and selfish people to take wrong turns. You've got something like transferring lead into gold, and let the greedy and the selfish work on that. What the symbolism of it is taking the lead in their metaphor is what our rough ashlar is, and the gold is what our smooth or perfect ashlar is. It's all of it is taking good men and making them better. And so we will try to point out the similarities between these other traditions and Masonic traditions, not to have us practice those. We don't want to do that, but we know that those practices have been used effectively by good men in the past for the kind of self-improvement that we're having. So we encourage people to look at that and see what that meaning is and realize Masonry and this other discipline, this a lot of times symbolically presented, have these common elements. What does that suggest? That suggests these are universal concepts, and that's what we're into, and that's our approach as a research lodge to what are called esoteric topics, not for witchcraft or any of that kind of stuff, which is the stock and trade of the anti-Masonry movement. By the way, we have an issue on anti-Masonry and exposures, and we expose a lot of anti-Masonry for what it is. It's just a misguided propaganda for the most part. And we make the point that the exposures, where people that had a grudge against Masonry would write down the ritual and publish it, it turns out that ends up being kind of a service, because that's most of what we know about our ritual
And history.
dating back 300 years comes from those exposures, because otherwise it was all mouth to ear. Nothing was findable later.
And you brought up data. There's a great book, Millennial Apprentices by Samuel Friedman is his name. And this brother from the East Coast did a 5-year study as to what was why were young Masons joining lodges. And he breaks down the data into is to search for more education, more knowledge. And that was the highest percentage of their reasoning for wanting to come to a lodge and stay in a lodge. And he concluded that if lodges did not implement some sort of educational aspect into their lodge, that they were not going to last long, that nobody was going to stick around, they were not going to have a foundation. So that's really interesting. If you have a chance to check that book out, it's pretty insightful as to right now what Masons are coming to the lodge and why they're staying in the lodges.
As we were talking about earlier too, something we had mentioned was the mysteries. They're hungry for the mysteries. They're hungry for that secret society. And although we may not be that secret society, but we definitely have elements of those older secret societies within our organization. The magic is absolutely there, and that's what they're looking for. So,
which also, brings me to, I guess, the birth of the Illumination lectures, right? I mean, you guys wanted to get it out there in physical form. You were getting the pamphlets, and you turned that into a magazine, and now you're having somebody actually in front of you talking about different things in Masonry, outside of Masonry, that relate to Masonry. Can you tell me how that was born?
Yes. Well, when I first came to South Pasadena Lodge, it didn't have a Masonic educational element to it. It was just a standard lodge. You would get your degrees, you would stick around and help out, get back on the line. And as a young junior warden with brother now worshipful Marco Garcia, we were always curious, and we know that there was much more. The more we were memorizing these lectures, the more intrigued we were in trying to find out, well, what's the in-between the line thing going on here? And that's when we would go to the Philosophical Research Society, to the library, to our own little library, and crack open books and figure out what it really meant. And to our surprise, some of those things that the symbols meant really connected to us personally, but also it was what we were hypothesizing they meant. So it was like that golden moment we were like, well, there's more here that we're not exploring. We should discuss it. So we would sit and have a discussion group with 4 or 5 of us, and that eventually grew into like, well, why don't we get this scholar that's local to come and talk at our lodge and see what he tells us about this? And then we had our very first lecture with 4 people there. Nobody really showed up, but it was just the ones that wanted more light, if you will. And eventually, one year, the year that I was master, the first time around, we decided to budget an educational fund for speakers, and I think we had 4 or 5 speakers that came by that time, and more people just slowly started to trickle in and showing up and being part of it, and now it's just become the tradition in our lodge. But before I became master, we sat down and we said, well, what kind of lodge do we want to be? And we broke it down into, well, we want to focus on leadership, on our identity, our history, our archives, if you will, and education. We want to be an educational lodge. How do we become an educational lodge where there's so many limited lodges that don't have a system in place that we could go copy, that we could riff off? So we slowly started doing what we felt we wanted in our experience that we didn't get when we first came into the lodge, which meant a chamber of reflection, the lectures, and at that point, the Southern California Research Lodge was looking for a home here in LA, so we hung out, wined and dined them, and smooshed. We did our due diligence and said, well, if you come to us, we should we'll rebrand it into a magazine thing, and we'll join it, we'll be part of it, and we'll help grow it so we can go hand in hand with the lodge and help us in forming this thing that we want to have as an educational lodge. And then from there, we started creating a curriculum for entered apprentices, fellow crafts, and it's still growing. It's evolving. It's never ending. I've come to realize. So you don't really look at the finish line, but the journey to a hypothetical finish line, because it's always going to be changing. But you asked what the genesis was. That's how it originally started, in saying, well, where do we see our lodge in 5 years? And so that's how we see it. So let's work our way backwards and see how we get there.
How you get there.
And those were the baby steps that we took. But it took a good solid 5 years before it became a standardized element
Right.
at South Pasadena 290.
So I remember at the beginning of my Masonic journey, I learned that South Pasadena Lodge was one of the more esoteric lodges in the LA area. And I went to one of the Illumination lectures and I was like, wow, this is awesome. I can't believe I can't believe we're not doing this, right? And could you tell me a time where that shift happened, where you guys started getting into this? Was there some pushback? Were there issues?
Yeah, well, like that, I think when we sat down after it was around our 125th anniversary in 2013. I think I was the junior warden or the senior deacon. And cracking open the archives, if you will. We were up in the attic opening up boxes with pictures of lodge members that we had never seen, historical records, and we're like, wow, there was such a history here that needs to be celebrated, and we need to be creating our own history. How are we going to create our own history? And that's when we sat down and hammered out that 5-year plan in wanting to turn it into the lodge that it's slowly becoming now. But it took, there was not a lot of push. There was just not understanding. And we didn't really begin like our chamber of reflection. I have lodges that come to our lodge and say, well, our lodge won't let us have a chamber of reflection. And my first thing is, well, why do you call it a chamber of reflection? Call it
Candidate waiting area.
a waiting area, a waiting room. Let him sit there, because you open the lodge and it takes about 15 to 20 minutes. Do you want him sitting in the dining room by himself, or would you rather have him sit in a little private area that we doll up for him with a candle that he can contemplate and meditate on what he's going to go? He's already hypersensitive and his emotions are really high at that point.
Right.
Here's a good way to focus it. And that's how we started doing it. Little did we know it was called a chamber of reflection or a room of contemplation until a year or two later when we were at Grand Lodge and somebody just said, hey, you're doing Chamber of Reflection. And I was like, what is that? And then when I researched it, I was like, oh, wow. Like, we not even thinking about it, we were already putting it into practice. And it made me, weirded me out, because it almost felt like some ghost at the lodge was directing us into trying to create something that was a standard before, and now it's making its way back.
I remember stepping in there, and I think it was we went for an installation, and Julio Luna took us to the chamber. You guys don't have a chamber. I'm like, no, can you show us? And he walked us through the experience, and it was really good. And we came back, and I told Ron and I told Joe, I'm like, hey, we got to do this. And we didn't know exactly how to do it. We just figured, we're going to figure it out. We're going to do it. And it's been excellent since.
But the question then becomes, why did you feel that you had to do it?
Because I feel that we're missing something. I feel that, again, I was waiting in where you're supposed to eat. If I would have had the room of reflection, the chamber of reflection, it would have meant more for me. And I feel like that the old ways, and again, we were talking that conversation earlier, the old ways were, they're watered down now. And we need to bring them back some way, shape, or form, because they have meaning and they have depth. And I think that's what the candidate takes with them. That's how you go through your degrees. And as you go through them, you want to make them more and more meaningful. And these are ways to, little things like that, make them more meaningful.
And that what goes back to what Worshipful Gerald said about the observant practices. All that really means is that you're going to excel in it. You're going to give the candidate an excellent experience. And what does excellent experience mean to you and to your lodge, and how are you going to portray that? And that's why people get scared when they hear, an observant lodge, that's hocus pocus, it's wizardry, we don't want it in our lodge. But all it really is saying is, do it better. Do a better job. That's all it's saying. On the bottom line, the bottom thesis, if you break it down, that's all it's saying. What are you doing to make this excellent and memorable to this candidate, better than your experience? And if every lodge just approaches that with just that in mind, I think you'll have a whole different attitude about Masonry.
And I think it'll promote growth as well.
Well, that's exactly true. Yeah.
That's the whole point of it, right? Is to promote
and,
growth.
And the key there, and thus the word observance, is paying attention, realizing that this is something that's profound. But if you just parade the profound substance pie too quick to notice, you get nothing out of it. So we use the chamber of reflection to start right off by having the candidate, even before he knows what's going on, think about, why am I here?
Yep.
Why am I interested enough that I'm going to go through this ceremony? So it creates some expectation and some drama. Another place where the consciousness makes a difference. We're all familiar with the difference between when somebody just rattles something off from memory versus they give it expression and put the feeling into
Intent. The
it.
intent.
But
that's
another
behind it.
thing that I think is really of the essence of observant practices is get rid of the idea that you have sideliners. That's an unfortunate term. People that are just on the sidelines, it's not like being a baseball game and you're eating hot dogs and peanuts. Your purpose there is to psychologically, intellectually, spiritually participate in that degree. So having that concentration intensifies the environment. And one of the things that we talk about with our candidates and recommend when you come back to see the degree again, it's good to try to identify with the candidate. When the candidate is, and you're on the so-called sideline, when the candidate is taking his obligation, take your obligation again. So you experience vicariously the degree over and over. Ritual works by repetition. And having everybody in there, even if they're not, it's what Wilmshurst calls the non-officiating brethren. And he emphasizes being really attentive to what is going on and to support that with all of your conscious awareness. That's, again, ties into the practice of meditation, because meditation is taking your awareness and narrowing it down so that all of your attention is focused on what your intention is. In the case of our regular meditations, we're talking about my intention is to comprehend on a deeper level what this symbol is or what this principle of Masonry is. And that's what makes the intensity of the initiation more profound. And think of the term initiation. Initiation means to start something. And the ceremony is no more than that. It's the start. It opens the door. But if you don't go through the door and into the experience and follow it up with study and contemplation, then you're never getting to the depth of it. When we were talking before, when I was talking with Michael, I was comparing it to skipping a stone across the pond. EA, FC, MM, but those just touch the top of the pond and bounce on. Well, if you do that, like when I was raised in 1966. When I was 21, I had been a DeMolay. And my impression was from the lodge where I was raised that Masons didn't even know what Masonry was. They when I got into DeMolay, my dad brought home Manly Palmer Hall's book, the Secret Teachings of the Ages, and I started reading that. So I had quite some ideas by the time I turned 21. I didn't really become active in Masonry until 2012. In the meantime, I actually studied in 2 or 3 mystery schools, modern versions of them. And
do you think if you would have had education, it would have kept you interested, or
it very well might have. It certainly would have raised my opinion of the value to myself of the Masonic experience. Yeah. And I was fortunate when I did it. When I finally got going in it, this idea of traditional observance had really started taking off, and it's taken off even more. We were talking earlier about the Masonic Restoration Foundation, and our leadership goes to their annual symposia every year, and the whole purpose of it is the promotion of observant Masonry. We have talks on it. We have degree exemplifications, meditations, and the like. And we bring that stuff home and put it into practice. And you don't have to do everything. Take whatever of the observant practices there are that are of interest to you and put those into
implement them
effect.
into your.
But what's great about the retreat, sometimes you'll get those stories of they'll have somebody speak that had a lodge that had nothing, was run down, and over 2 years, once they put these practices into place and the right-minded people join, like, it looks amazing, the transformations that these lodges have made, and it's an inspiring weekend. Brother Andrew Hammer and company they put it up, and if you guys can go, you should definitely check it out, because you learn from each other, and they bring those innovations and ideas that lodges are doing to make the experience better to the forefront and discuss it and say why it works, why it's not working, what backlash they're getting, and how they're addressing it, and it's insightful. It really is.
So it's a good place to collect data and then build off of that.
Yes.
Well, and we learned very essential kind of things for forming a new observant lodge or introducing observant practices into an existing lodge. And among the most important ones were, don't start coming off like you're all superior to everybody else. There's an infinite variety of different lodge cultures. And while we're striving for excellence, remember that brother Masons don't compete with one another. They're not trying to make themselves better than their brother. We're trying to make ourselves better than we were before. Right. And so that's always been a very important element, is to not pretend like we've got the golden secret and the rest of you are wasting your time. You're not wasting your time, but you are floating on the surface, and we really advocate take a deep breath, dive deep into the pool, and find out what it's
What's
really all
there.
about.
Yep. So moving on, I don't mean to cut you short there, but why don't you talk to us about MasonicCon that's coming up, and what was the formation of that, and how did you tell us about it?
Well, I had heard that MasonicCon started in Attleboro, Massachusetts. Brian Simmons started it out there, and about 4 years ago, I believe. And I had heard the name, and I was like, wow, why haven't we done that here in California, since it's a riff on Comic-Con? And it was born in San Diego, obviously. And what a great way, brilliant way to be able to bring a whole new generation into Masonry, the educational side of Masonry, but by branding it by this whole convention that is based off comic books and graphic novels, youth in a way. And that simmered, and I said, well, if we get the opportunity at my lodge, we've already established a lecture series. A lot of us at that lodge are filmmakers or filmmakers to be, so how can we incorporate all these elements? And I went to Boston last year or the year before, and I saw what he did, and it's amazing what they put together over there. And that was just one day. So how could we spread it and make it more unique to Masonry as the first time it's going to be introduced into California? And so we decided to do a weekend, the thought was, with screenings, which have never been done in any of these MasonicCons, the speakers, panels, and vendors, and kicking it off with a 7-course pop culture festive board. So it's like Masonry on steroids, if you will. It's like you have Masonry connects to so many things, and I think in that weekend you'll see how far-reaching Masonry can be, because you have prominent scholars that are well respected that are going to be there, to novice scholars that are just learning new things about Masonry, that they are eager to share that information with you. You have Masonic filmmakers that will be watching their films and doing Q&As with them, and even a film like Fight Club, that people
One of my favorite movies.
don't see, and there's a lot of esoteric Masonic, well, not clear Masonic, but a lot of connections to it on that esoteric level that we can bring up and discuss, and we will on that weekend through that film.
Are we going to have an actual Fight Club afterwards?
Maybe.
All right.
Maybe. We have a parking lot, so it can work.
Can't talk about it.
Masonry teaches so much by allegory, and looked at from the proper perspective. Fight Club is almost like allegorical to Masonry in terms of, well, their catchline: you don't talk about Fight Club outside of Fight Club. On the other hand, we at the Research Lodge, and as reflected in our lecture series at the South Pasadena Lodge, we don't want to hide Masonry's light under a bushel. We think that the more that the public is invited, almost all of our lectures are open to the public. The magazine we produce, you don't have to be a Mason to subscribe to it. A lot of Masons think that you can't talk about Masonry, but that the only thing that you can't talk about, we have an issue, our first issue last year, February 2018, is on Masonic secrecy. And what's secret are the modes of recognition, the grips, the signs, the tokens, the words, the very specifics of the ritual, especially the obligations. But as far as what the symbols are, what they mean, what the history is,
That's open.
the more that is made open to the public, the more people that will see we're not a bunch of devil worshippers. We're not a religion. We're really an organization. And at least in this country, we have to have a belief in God and afterlife for the soul, but we're not allowed to criticize one another's conception of what the deity is, and so we're not a religion because we don't teach religious beliefs. We actually, and where you really see this a lot is in the Scottish Rite degrees, actually look at the spiritual traditions from other cultures and other times, because there's wisdom in those. And what we want to do is mine the wisdom part of it. And so, I read anti-Masonic stuff, and I hear, they call the master worshipful. They worship the master of the lodge. No, we don't worship the master of the lodge. And so that's why we think Masonic education, we're not just educating ourselves and one another. We want to educate the public as well, as that this is a fraternity of good men, moral men, trying to be better and more moral, and thus improve society.
And the event is open to Masonicon is open to the public as well. It's not just Masons, and it's July 12th through the 14th, and they could get more information about the event, tickets at Masonicon.com.
Right now you're running a special?
Yeah, we have pre-sale tickets up until Sunday, and after Sunday the pre-sale ends and they go to regular price. We have 2 ticket tiers, so anybody that's interested, please go to the website, Masonicon.com, and check it out.
Yes, we look forward to going. It's one of those things where you get to meet brothers from other lodges, you get to meet people who aren't Masons, and you get to bond on a different plane. You know, you get to walk around and see things and kind of see different perspectives of what's going on.
Well, and learn from each other. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly. And I think that's what we're going to put out a video about the event this weekend, and you get to see the perspective of the levels of talented Masons out there that are going to be there, and everything that's going to go into it. And I think it's going to be a rare opportunity that might not happen again. So I think it's good to seize on it and see what the potential is when people work together to create something of substance, or at least we feel of substance, that could be shared with others to take home with them. I think that's kind of the thesis behind.
And then we're looking forward to it, but we're also looking forward to its continuation. If it's something that can continuously grow and become something bigger than what it already is, then wow, you've done something. And I think both of you are an asset to what Masonry is. And a brother of mine, Dave, he said there's one of two things, man. Either you're good for Masonry or Masonry is good for you. And I truly believe that. And you guys are good for Masonry. These are things that we need right now in this time to not only promote the craft, but really educate the public as to what we are, who we are, and what we're trying to do.
And ourselves. Educate
Exactly.
ourselves, yeah.
And I think that's, looking inwards, that's one of the things that we teach, in the chamber and in Lodge, is looking inside and seeing what you could build and bring out. And I think you guys are doing a great job with that. Going back to the Illumination lectures, is there a specific lecture that you like the most and why? There's so many of them. And you guys have
We've had some good
there's times
lectures,
when
that's
I've
for
walked
sure.
in, there's like over 100 people
Yeah,
at these lectures, and it's amazing.
We're regularly getting at least 35 or so, and regularly getting about 50, 60, and we've hit 100 a couple of times as
Wow.
well.
Yeah.
And again, it brings together a lot of people from different lodges, and it sets as an example for them. They start thinking about doing similar kind of things in their own lodge. And I'll just mention, by the way, we're looking forward to coming down here to you guys. So you're going to have an esoteric
Yes.
con September 7th.
Yes, September 7th, we will have Esoteric on. It's a different take on it. It's something that is encompassing everything, bringing all the mystery schools together, modern and old, ancient, and, sitting them down and kind of, learning from each other. Why not? Why can't we do that?
It's a great way to spend a day,
Exactly.
no doubt.
Exactly.
Or in our case,
That's
a
what
weekend.
that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. And, especially with brothers, we would like more brothers to participate and help out and be a part of this event, especially like we had this conversation before, we should want to support each other. And in regards to what you said earlier, is we're not trying to be a lodge better than another lodge. No, we're trying to help each other. That's the whole point of brotherhood, is to support each other and help me lift you up, and then you pick me up, and let's go as high as we can. Why not?
Yeah,
And-
that's what it's
And
about,
how
lift each
can
other up.
we support each other if we have events on the same weekends?
Yeah,
you know,
we
it's
can't
like
do that.
we were
That's just
talking
do
about
that,
that. Like
yeah.
this weekend, we know of two different, because we're having our St. John's Day feast this coming Saturday, but then there's the Grand Masters one, and then there's also
The Shrine.
the Shrine
The Shrine
Luau.
Luau.
Is
Yeah, I know.
it's like you're close enough to other events to support them and uplift your brothers. Why do you want to?
Well, and that's what happens when you go visit the East Coast, and you go to the Masonic Restoration Foundation when they have them in the East Coast, or when I went to MasonicCon in Boston. There you have like the Grand Lodge officers showing up to these events, and I'm like, well, why is that happening? Well, those are smaller states, and they're a little tighter. And here you have California, it's such a huge state with a lot of Masons and one Grand Master, one Grand Line that has to travel up and down the state, and they can't really make us all happy. But
Yeah,
I think
true.
that what needs to happen is just the communication. We just need to plan these things over a year out and solidify it and let them know to put it on those master calendars so they're aware of it as well, and they get more tactful that way, because I know they plan their calendars up to 2 years in advance. And if a new master comes in, they're just getting their calendar rolling, and if they have something special going on, it kind of gets muddled, which is sad because you would think something that you're going to invest all this time or money into it'd have a lot more support or
Right.
backing, but it just then it just falls on the lodge to do what they can to push it forward. But if you do it again, that's, I think, a great way to do it, is to say, well, next year we have the date, here you go, send it up north, so they're aware of, we're aware of, and we start promoting things earlier so people lay off those weekends and they could all concentrate on the big event that you throw. Yeah.
Yeah, the same weekend as Masonic Con, the Grand Lodge is doing a cornerstone for
West
for,
Covina
for
homes.
the West Covina homes.
Oh, is it
And
that?
then-
That's
the
it.
same
And Mason
weekend.
of the Year awards that night in Pasadena. So.
Wow.
Right.
But you asked me the speaker, any favorite speakers, and I'll tell you the when I get the most kick out of speakers when it's one of our own guys from our lodge, a brother from our lodge that I helped raise, and all of a sudden they're going to come and do a talk. Like when Marco, Johnny, and Julio did the talk on the Chamber of Reflection. Jamie Lamb just recently did the talk on magic. He was at our lodge for a few years. He affiliated, and he was talking to us about this stuff that he was reading. So when that starts to happen, and even earlier on, we had other brothers from our lodge that were doing them before it got a little bigger. And the more I see that, the more proud I am of what Masonry can accomplish and how we can inspire them and give them the confidence to want to do that kind of thing. And I think that's what you're going to see more of in the years to come, more grassrooted individuals that want to share the information that they have discovered.
And the Research Lodge does a version of that as well. If you're reading our magazines from month to month, you may have noticed that we frequently will have individual articles that are written by members of the Research Lodge ourselves or others. We've also been recently having kind of a growth process in terms of having people. Many of them have been speakers that we have gotten to know through the Illuminations series that then will guest edit an issue.
Oh, wow.
So we're in our future planning, we're wanting to have that be more and more, because we want the magazine to be a platform for people to be able to explore their own capacities in terms of organizing and putting together a magazine, or even just writing an article for it.
Whatever their Masonic journey may be.
Whatever their Masonic journey can be. So we're helping to raise the profile of the new generations of people that will contribute. We also have had really good success with a couple of our issues. In September of the last 2 years, we've had polls. One of them was for the top 10 books that have influenced our readership in Masonry. And then last year in September, we had a vote for the top 10 esoteric authors of Masonic books. And there we have people who already have a high profile, but we're trying to get it, make it known to more Masons by putting it in the magazine. And
there's so much stuff out there that we just want to sort of condense it and say, well, this is what everybody is saying or reading, and I think the polls help streamline it a little better for Masons to figure out what might be something they should invest in.
At least a top 10 list for them to
Exactly.
start going down rabbit holes, right?
Data is important, and it doesn't lie. I mean, data is very important. Large companies pay for that to forecast their future and what they're going to invest in. So,
And we'll probably do this book poll, we're talking about every 5 years, maybe, just to like freshen it up, if you will.
and do you see the Illumination lectures growing into something else, or is it kind of steadily staying what it is right now? What did you see forecast
The
in the future?
future.
Well, a Masonicon thing like this is kind of stems from that. So that's one example. But I think just keeping it more consistent, and it's sad that a lot of lodges that had consistent lectures have stopped. They haven't had the manpower to maintain them,
Yeah.
and that's unfortunate. And we have been blessed to still keep it alive, and that's a testament to the committees that are formed and the incoming masters that see a value in it, and
Continue
whether
to
they want to
support.
attend all the lectures or not, they still budget for
It's
them
important.
to make sure
Yeah.
it happens for the lodge, which is what we're thankful for as well. But it's sad that it's sort of diminished at other other lodges, and we can still carry the torch for how long?
Well, you planted the seed, right?
Yeah.
And earlier we were talking about watering the plant and continuing to water that plant and being present in order to watch it grow and make sure it's going in the right direction, following the light,
Yes.
right? So I think that's very important for all lodges. If you're going to start a program or you're going to start something within your lodge, to make sure you follow through and make it
Nurture it.
keep it big, growing, and
You have to
know,
cultivate it. You can't just walk away from it after it reaches a zenith and it, you get all the pats on the back for it. You have to live through it, through the good and the bad of it, and kind of commit to the fact that this might be a lifelong thing I'll be doing. As long as they support it, I'll be here to assist in providing it and bring along other people, and hopefully they're more inspired than me and
Yeah.
help make it better. And
Exactly.
if I could step out away for a few years and I could still come back and it's there, but I should always still be fathering, nurturing that thing I helped create,
yeah,
right?
definitely.
It's the only way.
It's something that, it's very important because you birthed it. You want to make sure it's growing, and you want to make sure it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, and it wasn't just me; it was a few of us, but it definitely, and they've all still remained either integral or part of it in some shape or form, which only makes the journey much more special. I think when you see them
better together.
there. Oh yeah, you get more done. You
Yeah.
get more done that way.
Definitely.
Yeah, masonry is definitely teamwork.
It's the beehive of
Yes,
commerce.
yes, one of
right?
my favorite emblems.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I feel the worker bee. I mean, us coming together to get to a specific goal. It's very important for us to work together in order to get there. But it also understanding what the goal is. We need to know what that goal is in order to achieve it. And like all four of us together, we have a common goal. We want to enrich this craft and grow and help it grow in different ways, but we have a common goal. We're doing something for the craft. We're doing something not for ourselves, but for the craft. And I feel through our labors, we're going to see something beautiful grow out of this. Through Keepers of the Word, through Illumination lectures, through Masonicon, through Socal Research Lodge. It's something that I feel is needed, especially right now. It's
On the way down here, Dago and I were talking about leadership in the Masonic context. And we were talking about, in particular, teamwork and leading by example. And the example and the finest instance of it that I have heard, that I have personally witnessed, is this guy sitting right next to me here, and he's willing to do anything. He'll sweep the floor. He will do the most responsible thing, and he will do the least of things without regard to what kind of prestige he's gonna get out of it. Another thing that we talked about that I really learned first in esoteric groups that I was in before I really got active in Masonry, and that is that people always get in this thing about taking credit for something. And I've seen so many groups fall apart at the seams over that kind of issue. So I have this kind of watchword, which is that credit when shared is multiplied, not divided. And when you share the credit, because very seldom nothing that this guy here has accomplished did he do by himself. He did it in part by showing that he was willing to work, inviting other people to participate in that, giving them responsibilities, backing them up, and that is what really makes teamwork. And when you've shared credit for something with someone, then they feel that they've been valued by that. If somebody helps you do something, but you want to hug all the credit to your own self, that makes people feel ignored. It makes people feel diminished. That's not the way Masonry is supposed to work. We should always be working for the good of the whole, for the good of the entire hive.
Exactly.
No.
You know?
Yeah, it was. I've been taught that within the Pythagoras school that no one actually had official ID. Everything that was published out of that school was a combined effort of the school, and no one took individual credit for it. So really, it's hard to know where those theorems and such that came out of Pythagoras' school, who actually came up with them, because they all shared. They shared their ideas, and they appreciated the glories together, and they took the heartache together as well.
That's what I like about things like what we're doing right now with this conversation. None of these ideas belong to anybody here at this table.
Correct.
These ideas the reason we're sharing them isn't just our conversation, but whoever else may listen to that and take that as an example. That's the way this fraternity is going to grow.
I agree.
Absolutely.
I agree. Where do you see Freemasonry in the next 10 years?
I think that it's going to start growing again. When I joined in 1966, I think that was kind of the top where the membership peaked, and it started going down. And as it went down, Grand Lodge after Grand Lodge started concentrating on how many bodies can we get in here. People started coming to a lodge and being handed a petition the first time they walk in the door. People rush through the degrees. There are places where they want to make it. They said, these are busy young men these days. There's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of things that they're doing. We should make it faster, easier. That has devalued it. Anything that you can get fast and easy, you don't value it. When you have to work for it, when you have to strive, when you have to put effort into it, that gives you value. That internalizes that
Ownership.
value. And so I think as we do that, we're going to reverse that trend. That the membership will grow, and that we'll have fewer members like I was for 40 years, where I was a member in name and dues only.
Card-carrying Mason.
And yes, a card carrying. You should be doing something other than carrying the card. I'm really optimistic that we're going to see a new growth in the fraternity, and it's going to be based around Masonic education and observant practices, making the ceremonies the depth dive into ageless wisdom that is designed to be, rather than us all just skipping our stones across the pond.
But you also mean like a growth in value, right?
Yes.
The value, what you're learning, and not growth and not too much. I don't think it's going to blow up into the numbers that you saw after World War II in the 1950s, where it was they just had so many Masons they didn't even know what to do with them. And I think it's going to be much more of
Quality
value,
over
quality,
quantity.
and you're not going to have 500 members in a lodge, but you'll have like 100 very well-rounded Masons that hopefully can lead by example, and that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, I think that quality is much more important than the quantity.
Correct.
But I do think that the quantity will also rise. if the quality that we're putting out is going to draw the kind of men that will buy into this and that will have Masonry really change their lives in a deep way.
I had a brother, I believe he was from North Hollywood Lodge. I'm not going to put his name out there because, I don't have his permission to say what I'm about to say. He was a part of a different order before he joined Masonry, and he was part of the OTO. And he had a great time at the OTO. He got the information that he wanted, and he came to Freemasonry because he wanted the brotherhood. He wanted to be around the loyalty, the brotherhood, the solidarity that's here. And I believe that's the differentiator, if I may, that we're more of a solid group than everybody else. And I'm not trying to take away from anybody, but I'm saying this group, this fraternity is built on specific virtues. And, one of them being, honor. Honor is very important. I mean, to me it is. And I think that's what's going to bring that type of quality that we want, the good folk that want to come down here and make a difference.
Well, I think it changes usually when men join Masonry, it's if they don't come into it with an agenda, I feel that they get more out of it and they stick to it and they embrace it. And ones that do come with an agenda either dispel it and stick with it, or they say, "Oh, it's not for me," and they leave. So I think that's where it makes it a bit different than most of the men that do come through our doors don't really have an agenda except to understand what this mystery is. What am I going to get out of this? What am I going to learn? And when they come to our lodge, we flip it on them and we say, well, what are you going to bring to the lodge? What value do you feel you have in yourself that we could help you grow and expand and you can contribute to and share with us so we can learn from you as well? Because you have that gift in you, it just needs to be opened up. And Masonry helps provide the tools for you to do that, but it won't do it for you. And it won't be easy. There's work involved, and we lay it out right in the beginning so there's no misconception of what they're getting into before they even put in their application. So it's a great filtration process to the point of, okay, well, they're not ready for this. Their life is too busy to really commit to this. And that's fine. The lodge will still be here. Come back when you can do this, because now you know what it's going to take. Now, so take your time and take it, make it more of a priority than the rest of the other stuff that might be important right now in your life to handle.
And this is a really important point as well. And I was talking before about some lodges you could come and they'll give you a petition the first time you come in the door. We don't do it that way. In observant practices, is called guarding the west gate. Right. Be careful who you bring into a lodge. Yep. So we have a very active social calendar at South Pasadena, and we have a really good cook for our stated meeting dinners. We invite prospects to come to this, and we go out of our way to see that they meet a lot of different people. We don't give them a petition until they know quite a few people in the lodge, and we don't really try to capture them in any way. We really explain what our approach to Masonry is, that we're heavily into taking your time going through the degrees. We're heavily into study and meditation, things like that. That might not be what you're most interested in. And if it isn't, we still want to encourage you to be in Masonry, but we'll recommend, why don't you go to Lodge X, or why don't you go to Lodge Y? Check those out as well. Lodges should not be competing for members any more than they should be trying to outdo one another. Right. And so
they've all got different personalities and different peoples and different likes and.
Well, the way I describe it to somebody visiting a lodge is lodges are like high schools. You have a high school that's great, has a great football team, another one that's got a great debate team, another one's got a great chess team. If you're a chess player, do you want to join the lodge that's got the great football team? Of Of course not.
Right.
So you want to travel and visit other lodges and see which one you connect to the best, because that's the one you're going to want to commit to, and it's going to be your second home. So you don't marry right after the first date. You kind of keep going on a few more before you commit to it, and that's what we encourage them to do. And I mean, most of the time they come back and they say, well, I kind of like this one the most. Okay, well then let's move forward. But that's our way of saying we're not the end all be all. We're not the only one. We're not the best. We're not the worst. There's a lot out there. We just want to make sure that you know what is out there, so you know your choice was the correct choice when you chose
Right.
whatever lodge
That you
choose.
found your home.
Because I didn't have that option. When my mother lodge, I just came in, God was given an application. I didn't even know I could visit other lodges, and I didn't travel out until I was a Master Mason to visit my first lodge out of my own mother lodge. And I think that was not a big mistake, but I think I would have benefited more and made a better educated choice if I would have been able to visit other lodges and see what the perspective was like in those significant lodges.
Question for you, Dado. Seek Life wants to ask, what was your most profound Masonic experience so far?
Most profound Masonic experience.
Most profound, well, probably the third degree, getting my third degree and feeling, and well, can't really talk about it too much, but I think that to me was a very emotional and spiritual, it felt like it was the end of a journey and the beginning of another journey, if you will. And to me, that had a profound impact. And then seeing Masons that I have helped raise go up the line and become masters themselves and help create things at the lodge that have helped Masonry also. I think it's a big kick that I get from Masonry.
I think that for me, I know that when I see these younger generations that are coming up and doing stuff, it's definitely it's kind of a fatherly feeling almost, that like you're watching your kids grow up, you know, and you're like they're moving on, they're doing this, you know. I'm the president of a motorcycle club, and I was the first prospect of the club. So I went through that, and now I get to watch all my prospects going through the prospect periods to become full-fledged, full-patched members of our club, and it's definitely a joy to see
encourage
that.
you to stick around.
Oh, absolutely.
And continue to contribute and see them stick around and contribute and pay it forward. And I think that is what helps keep a lodge grounded and sustainable as well, laying that foundation with the newer members that you see move up and take over your positions.
Yep.
I think that's important and great.
It's paying it forward. That's probably the most fulfilling, I would say. You know, like I remember when I was going through my degrees, after I was done with my degree, my brother here would pull me to the side and he'll give me a different perspective as to what everything is. And that was just mind blowing for me. I was like, wow. So now I'm able to pass that on to Jonathan, to Brian, and other brothers that are around.
Well, it's so funny you say that, because South Pass, there was a past master that we all us younger Masons knew more, and he would flaunt it like, oh, well, you don't really know what that means yet, but wait till you get in. When we get the degree, we're like, well, what does that mean? And he would not share it. He was part of the joy is to figure it out yourself. I'm like, well, then don't tease me. Help me out. Throw me a bone. I mean, point me in the right direction at least. But
over here.
that was just the worst. Like whenever he would just make everything, point to things and say, this means more than what you think it is. And I'm like, all right, well, educate me. And then he would just walk away. I always said that to him. I will never do that to a brother,
Exactly.
any brother, if they ask. And if I know, I'll share if they're ready to learn it. But it goes both ways.
Brother Gerald, how can somebody join or get the publication of Socal research?
Well, one thing they could do is go online to our website, which is theresearchlodge.org.
Com.
Although .com or .org, either one
they'll both get you there.
will get you there. It costs $25 a year to
That's good.
receive the 11 issues of the magazine, and for that you get a link on the first of the month to a digital version of the issue, and then the magazine in this form costs an extra $10.
The hard copy.
And for the hard copies, this was the first year, and we started going right through symbolism of Freemasonry, and we started with the Masonic Apron, because that's the first gift that you get from your lodge.
Right.
And found. That's pretty cool. I enjoy these very much. So yeah.
I take the apron issue and the Ashler's issue when I go see particular entered apprentice degrees, and I will give one to the newly initiated brother, as a way of trying to interest him in Masonic education, and a way to perhaps not so subtly put in a plug for the research lodge at whatever it is, the lodge that I'm visiting.
You guys are I can definitely say that you had an impact on me for 15 years ago when I joined the lodge, because there was a book that was put out from Southern California Research Lodge that was white like my apron, and I could open it up and do this research on, now that I'm a part of this fraternity, and it was a gift. That's
Alan Roberts' book, The Craft and Its Symbols.
Yeah.
And it looks like an apron because the
cover has
the cover has a blue line that looks like the flap of.
It was a top 10 book, right? It was a top.
Yes.
You're holding onto the top 10.
Was this one right here?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, that's cool. And so you could go to the website and subscribe there. Masonicon. What are the dates again?
July 12th through the 14th, Masonicon.com. Fraternal Review is going to have a booth there. So, the Research Lodge, they're going to have it as big as Grand Lodge with the books, the magazines. We just printed the 2018 annual, so it's all in one book. That's going to premiere at Masonicon. And we're picking them up next week, right?
And we're going to have a booth at your esoteric
Yes,
con
we will.
as
We look
well.
forward to that as well.
I don't know if we're going to bring all of the books down, but we'll definitely be doing the magazines and a selection of the books.
Well, we got you prime real estate for that.
Okay,
So
that's
we look forward
great.
to
We'd
it.
love to do it. And at those events, we also have written applications that you can do to subscribe to the magazine. We changed our membership policies just a couple of years ago because of the Grand Lodge changing their policies a little
Structure,
bit.
yeah.
They made it where if you're just subscribing to the magazine and you don't renew in January, starting in February you don't get the magazine anymore. But if you're a member and you don't resubscribe, then that's your dues, and you show up on the iMember system on the Grand Lodge website as not in good standing, which can cause you trouble, especially if you are an officer in a lodge. We now make it where, in order to join the Research Lodge, we only want people to be members who want to actually come and participate. Okay. So now, in order to be a member, your subscription is your dues, but you have to come to the Research Lodge. We meet the third Mondays of January, April, July, and October. You have to come to a stated meeting. You have to file a regular affiliation petition. And because we don't confer degrees, we don't have to investigate you beyond that you're in good standing in your Blue Lodge. That's your qualification. We can actually vote you in that very night. We also, just to make sure you're taking it seriously, we also now have an affiliation fee of $150. So we went from having about 700 odd members to now we're somewhere in the 70s, I think, but we have the people as members who want to be active, and other Masons can participate. You don't have to be a member to come to our meetings. You don't have to be a member to participate in our activities. But if you do want to be a member, we want you to be an active member.
Not much to ask for.
So, if you're going to go to MasonicCon, make sure you get your, if you want the discount, make sure you get the tickets before Sunday, MasonicCon.com. We look forward to being there. We look forward, I'm looking forward to Fight Club.
Yeah, me too.
So it's going to be a good time. I feel, just brotherhood, fun, information, knowledge, all of it. It's going to be a great time.
Anybody that went to Grand Lodge year before last and saw Johnny Royal's movie, 33 and Beyond, I think is the name of it. Yep. He has a
Illuminati.
new movie, that much of it filmed at our South Pasadena Lodge on the rituals of the Illuminati. And
are you debuting this movie?
that movie is
There'll be
is-
preview of
is-
it, a short little preview of it.
And, and Johnny will be there as
Yeah,
well.
he's going to be there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
To Q&A.
Well, we like Brother Johnny. He came down here and we saw 33 and Beyond here with him. It was a really good time.
Yep.
And this one's really, really impressive because he's got a lot of the scholars. Joseph Wages, who wrote the book
I saw that.
on
Yeah.
the Secret School of Wisdom.
We've been waiting
Adam
for it.
Kendall.
We get that probably one of the things that we're asked over and over and over and over again from our audience is Illuminati questions, and we just keep saying we're not going to talk about it until, because as soon as Johnny told us that he was working on that movie when we had him up here for the viewing, we're like, okay, we're not even going to pretend to talk about it until that movie comes out, so that we can have good, firm, legitimate
Reference.
And it's shot beautifully. They went to Germany. They did some shoot. I saw a lot of those. Yeah. It's
Yeah, I
great.
think I think the night that he was here, he had just gotten back from Austria or something like that. So he was pretty jet
They
lagged.
recreated a lot of the degrees. I don't think they show a lot of them, but they still show enough that makes it. It's like the factual story. It's like a historical piece on the truth of it, of how it existed, how it came about, and how it fell apart, and why pop culture has adopted it as the thing.
Yeah.
But so it'll be a good view.
Awesome.
Sure.
Awesome. That'll be
Well,
fun.
we look forward to it. Right now, we're going to wrap up, if that's fine with everybody.
Thank you.
MasonicCon, we're looking forward to it. We're going to be there. Hopefully, you all can make it. We'd like to meet you there if possible. Go to MasonicCon.com. We also want to thank Samsung Technologies for the sounding equipment, LA Harbor Lodge for the Goose and Gridiron, Indigo Beehive Creative for producing the show, and all of our fans for supporting. And check out keepersoftheword.net. That's where we have a bunch of our stuff, and we're going to start forwarding information, links, and things from our brothers, in order to support and support the craft. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for joining us.
And we want to thank you guys too for having us here, and for the fellowship that we had before we started talking on air this evening. And we see that we can really be symbiotic with one another.
Exactly.
And
That's for sure.
have our
brothers supporting
efforts
brothers.
reinforce one another.
And thanks for having the courage to start one of the first podcasts in California, right? Is there another one?
I don't know of them.
Masonic podcast.
We see stuff popping up every once in a while. I don't know.
We just do us.
We exactly.
Well, that's what it's all about.
Stay focused on our vision.
Well, our magazine usually has a podcast and a film and a book in our pop culture section that relates to whatever that month is. We look forward to maybe having you guys be one of our
We would
podcasts.
love
with
to.
us.
I'd like to.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And I do look into them to see if they connect to the themes every time we have to
Yes,
pick one. I'm
yes.
like, did they do one on this?
Yeah, he doesn't just pull it out of the index. He actually
they're not.
looks at it first. Yeah.
But yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
Thanks again.
Thank
Thank you, brothers.
Thank
like,
you.
follow, share.
Please.